Welcome to Behind the Investigation with Atlanta News First Investigates. I am Sierra Cummings, and I've got Andy Parati here today. Love to have you, Andy.
Thanks for having me.
This is a story today that you're going to talk about that is a part of your ongoing series called Taxation Through Citation. Explain a little bit.
Yeah, so it is a series of investigations that we have been doing throughout the year, showing municipalities in Georgia using their police departments to make profit. And many of these cities, we found out, literally could not operate without the money, the revenue that these police departments bring in. So after producing about 2 or 3 of those investigations, our assignment desk got a phone call, and it led to me being introduced to these 2 officers. Take a listen.
Drive through the city of Poland, Georgia, and you may hear a pattern of complaints pour in about its police force.
It's crazy because you'll be slowing down and everything, and then boom, they're on you.
It's a speed trap.
A sleepy town in South Georgia covering less than 2 square miles.
When you get to Poland, you slow down.
Yeah, that'll get you.
John Masters ticketed a lot of those drivers.
As far as I knew, I was a model employee.
When he worked at the police department about 2 years ago.
I thought I was keeping the roadways safe.
When did that change?
For me, it started when I was told I needed to write so many tickets a night, and that those tickets paid for the car, paid for my salary, paid for the maintenance of the vehicle, the incidentals for the department, and paid for city services.
So you believe that you wrote tickets that...
Because of the quota that I would ordinarily have not have written.
City records show John often wrote dozens of tickets a week, second only to the city's assistant police chief at the time.
He basically told me, if you don't do this, you're not going to have a fun time here.
John isn't the only officer making those claims.
Thought there was something wrong with that.
Zach Watson worked at the Poland Police Department too.
So when I started asking questions like, why is there such a push for these citations, especially this amount? Where's the money going?
What was their response?
Because I wanted you to. We need that money.
An Atlanta News First investigation uncovered 44% of Poland's city budget came from fines and forfeitures in 2022. Revenue collected by its police force, nearly 50% the year before, around the same time John and Zach worked there. Poland has a long history of excessive ticketing claims. 15 years ago, the Georgia Department of Public Safety investigated its police department for profiting off drivers. While it cleared the agency of wrongdoing, it uncovered 103% of its budget came from traffic citations, pointing out it has an unusually large budget for a 5-officer police department for a town with a population of 1,700 residents.
I don't know what money they need for Poland, but they sure getting it.
The city of Poland is no outlier. State records show at least 17 cities in Georgia relied on 25% or more of their revenue from fines and forfeitures from 2020 to 2022. According to the Institute for Justice, Georgia ranks as the worst state in the country with laws that may enable or encourage what it calls taxation by citation.
It's shocking. I mean, there's no doubt about it.
We shared our findings with State Representative Joseph Gullett.
That's more than problematic. It takes money to fund a city, but it doesn't need to be driven, strictly by tickets. It needs to be about public safety.
Georgia law allows the state to revoke or suspend speed detection device permits when ticket revenue exceeds 35% of police departments' budgets, but that only involves tickets for speeding-related fines. That means cities can collect as much revenue as they want from other traffic offenses. Representative Gullett, a Republican from Paulding County, says he wants to find a legislative solution to address the loophole.
The best government is typically the one closest to the people, but sometimes they get it wrong, and that's when we have to go step in and try to right the ship.
The city of Poland declined recent interview requests, but its attorney Tommy Coleman spoke to us earlier this year, explaining why he believes lawmakers should leave South Georgia municipalities alone.
Cities and counties in Georgia and other places ought to be able to master of their own destiny. They ought to be able to control their own revenue.
Frustrated drivers who feel gaslit by what they call an unfair police practice.
When you're coming through Poland, there's always got somebody pulled over.
So hopefully they don't get us on the way down there.
In a state that allows cities to collect unlimited cash from drivers through local law enforcement.
Sometimes it's scary to talk about the agency that once employed you, especially if the agency is a government one. How did you get these two officers to talk?
So I was just transparent with them. I said, listen, I don't know what's going to happen if you do an interview and you do a story. I don't know what sort of consequences, if any, will happen. But I will promise to be transparent in the reporting. Here's the focus of the interview. And if anything happens, please reach out to me and we'll report it. I think one of the things, just to show you how committed they were in wanting to share their stories, both of these gentlemen live like 3 hours away. Both still live in Georgia. They drove all the way to Atlanta to do the interview. One of the gentlemen that we interviewed, one of the officers, Zach Watson, clearly very, you didn't see it because we used very little of him, but clearly very nervous. I think the nervousness is that they just wanted to get it right, but he was shaking throughout his interview.
Well, and I'm sure they're nervous because of that potential backlash. Did they receive any after the story aired?
They told me that they did get some phone calls from individuals basically saying, whoa, can't believe you did that, colleagues, people in law enforcement that they used to work with. We thought maybe the police chief would respond because I was emailing him and in contact with him multiple days before the story aired, trying to compel him to participate in an interview. And he kept telling me, one of them, John Masters, has an ongoing post investigation. That is the state agency that investigates whether an officer has done something wrong where they could lose their certification, whether they could be a police officer anymore. Well, just days after the story aired, Post released its findings, and guess what? It said, our recommendation is to take no action against this officer.
We talk about how this is behind the investigation. I actually remember you working for these interviews, really. I mean, we understand the fear that they had and the nervousness surrounding, but it really is a testament to, yes, their commitment to wanting to get the story right, but also you making sure you added that really valuable, crucial perspective.
Yeah, I wanted to make sure if, after John Masters was the first one to reach out to me, he made some big, bold claims, and I said, listen, do you have anyone else on the police force that you used to work with that would be able to verify some of this stuff? Because, as you know, if you have such big, bold claims, you want to have multiple sources.
Yeah, me and Brenda were talking in another podcast, the greater the claim, the greater the evidence that's required.
Right. And so, I kept hounding that away, and Zach Watson, the other former officer, he was the one that a little bit more difficult to compel to do an interview. But I kept saying, I said, listen, I value your feedback. I think pulling the curtain away from this issue is really important. And you would be really beneficial to the story of sharing the story. More people are going to believe it when it's more than just one officer saying these things.
Power in numbers there. Let's talk about the legislative aspect of this story. So that lawmaker you profiled in this particular story, was that lawmaker aware of these two officers' claims?
Yeah, so I showed him video of the first officer that we interviewed, John Masters. I showed him video at the courthouse. We didn't include it in the story, but I think his reaction was, wow, if this is true, this is a big deal. He had already, even before that point, had already made the decision based on our prior reporting that he wanted to take some sort of legislative action. I think he's still trying to figure out what that actually looks like. It could include a cap on the amount of traffic citation revenue municipalities in Georgia can collect. It can include something else, but he made it seem really important that the constituents, the lawmakers that represent those parts of the state are included in that decision making. But he also wanted to make sure that that cities simply don't participate in taxation through citation too.
And, for people that might not be aware, obviously he's committing to some form of legislation, but it's not like this happens overnight. The legislative session doesn't even start until 2025.
Yeah, and as you are aware, just covering the state legislature for years, that any legislation that you bring forth and it has to do with police and law enforcement is a tough sell. And so we will see, but I tell you what, after all the stories that I've done over the past year, this one and another story involving the same issue, I received dozens of emails of people saying, this happened to me too. I was pulled over. I don't think I was speeding, or I don't think I was doing X, Y, Z, and I believe it was simply to make the town or the city money.
We know you'll stay on top of it, and we look forward to see what shakes out of the legislative session. Thanks so much for joining us, Andy. For all you watching and listening, this has been Behind the Investigation with Atlanta News First Investigates. Really important here. You can watch, listen anywhere you get your podcast. That's YouTube, Spotify. I know I enjoy Apple. I'm an Apple girly, so make sure you watch, listen.
I'm a Pandora.
Yeah, anywhere you get your podcast, any platform. We're everywhere. Thanks for joining us today.